Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Jamf After Dark podcast, a podcast to introduce you to the people at Jamf, learn about what we're up to when it comes to managing and securing devices, along with what's happening in the IT landscape. I'm your co-host, Kat Garbus, joined by my co-host and also today's special guest, Sean Rabbit.
Thank you, Kat. And we do have to have a shout out of why I'm the special guest, though, because there was supposed to be a special guest star today, Mr. Mike Vandelinder, who is the product owner or product manager for identity here at Jamf. And he and his beautiful wife just gave birth to a lovely little potato. So he is out on baby leave and has the most cute little adorable picture that I got the other day. And he will be back here at Jamf shortly. But yes, he has his very own adorable potato because let's face it, baby that size, it hasn't quite gotten past potato stage, but it's still adorable.
We love when there's more Jamf potatoes added to the Jamf family. So, congrats, Mike, and to your wife. We are sorry you were unable to join us today, but you and Sean already work together pretty closely, and you helped us prep for today's session. So, congrats to you and the wife and the new little potato. And Sean and I will carry on and discuss identity with today's guest.
There you go. So sorry, 7 listeners, you got to listen to me more often today in this podcast, but that's okay. I still love you.
Perfect. So I want to, since I'm going to play, I think I'm playing like full on host as I usually do. You're kind of like host and guest, but mostly guest today. But I really want to talk about some of these updates in identity. I want us to really unpack a few things today. And yes, we'll touch on Jamf Connect quite a bit. But I want to talk about some of these Apple updates. I want to talk about kind of the marketplace as a whole when it comes to identity. And I think that's really where we're going today. And to really start with that, platform single sign-on. We've touched on single sign-on, right, in the past. A lot of us listening already know what single sign-on is, but now there's this little nuance to it, and there's a little update from the Apple Orchard on platform single sign-on. So, can you talk to us about it and bring us up to speed on what it is?
So I think that when we talk about this platform thing, though, got to kind of talk about what the history was behind it first, though. And I'm sorry, I'm going to like soliloquy for a while here. Um, do you remember Enterprise Connect back in the day, Kat?
I do. Was it Catalina? Do I have that right?
It sounds right. I mean, it's been a while. It's been a hot minute. I mean, it's probably 10 plus years now at this point that this thing's existed. And what it used to be is that it was a professional services engagement that you'd buy from Apple that you also happened to get an app that you would own at that point. I think it was like $10,000. They'd come out. And what it did is it made it so you could get a Kerberos ticket for your on-premises computers from your on-premises Active Directory and use that curb ticket to do things, print to files or print out files and attach to printers, file shares, whatever it is that you needed to do with that Kerberos ticket at that point. It was a bit of a pain because, well, Active Directory is a bit of a pain, right? So they'd actually have to come out and someone would install the software for you, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward. Okay. They got rid of Enterprise Connect. At the same time, Joel and Josh kind of released Nomad because it was the alternative. It was like, okay, here's the open source version of what you would get from Enterprise Connect, except you didn't have to pay for the software because it was open source. Okay, cool. So that existed. On-prem Active Directory. Apple decides that it no longer wanted to just do that with the service engagement, so they included it now in the operating system, and it was called the Kerberos single sign-on extension. Cool. Now AppleCare can help you set it up. And then they got stuck with all those questions because everybody's on-premise Active Directory is a wacky mess of nightmarish 30-year-old technology. Cool. Then they introduced this idea called single sign-on for enterprise. Okay. So what the heck did that do? Well, that lets you actually sign in with your cloud identity provider instead. And then anything that you would sign in with cloud identity provider would automatically work. Really neat. Except then it took 4.5 years for an identity provider to actually write any software that supported that. Okay. Then they introduced platform single sign-on. And now we're basically back where we were before. We're now waiting on identity providers to write a bunch of software for it. So that's always fun.
So thank you for the history lesson there and the refresh. And I guess if I were to boil it down to a simple question, how does platform single sign-on differ from just plain old single sign-on that we've known since yesterday?
Okay, so platform, its goal is still to do single sign-on, right? So I log into say Salesforce. It's gated with Microsoft Entra. Cool. Once I've logged into Salesforce, then I go over to Workday. It automatically logged me in because now it has this cached set of credentials on the computer, and now there's this app on the computer that goes out and does the negotiation for me. Kind of cool. The platform piece just adds it on that it also happens to update your local Mac password to match that. So that 1960s username and password that's been there, that's your Unix username and password, it just happens to have the same password as your cloud identity provider password, with all of the caveats involved with the crazy stuff that you can do with like restricting your local account password requirements and blah blah blah. See my PSU session last year at the Mac Admins Conference, and you'll learn all the intricacies of local account management, which is always fun.
So then my next question becomes, with these changes, does any identity provider actually support it while it's in production right now?
I like the way that you phrased that. While it's in production right now, the answer is no. There
Okay.
is no identity provider out there that currently, in general release, supports platform single sign-on. There are two identity providers that have it in some sort of preview. Cool. Microsoft Entra ID has a preview copy for platform single sign-on. The version from not Sonoma, what was the one right before Sonoma? Ventura? Is that what?
I'm going to go with that one.
Okay. Microsoft Entra ID supports platform single sign-on as defined by macOS 13, not 14 Sonoma, 13. And that's where it just does the password sync. That's currently in preview. It is I believe, a private preview right now. So it's not like you can just go out and grab it yourself. Same thing with Okta. They have a similar thing there where they're doing a private preview and they use their application, in which case is Okta Verify, that actually will do that. But normal single sign on is fully supported and released by Microsoft Entra ID and Okta. So the old school, the one that was released 6 years ago, is now finally out into the world.
So then where does Jamf Connect fit in this? Is there still a place for it? Where does it is there anything that's duplicated in what platform single sign-on does? I guess where does what we currently know fit into this new equation?
Oh, you can just come out and say it. Did we get Sherlocked? That's the question you want to ask. um, I've had this conversation so many times with people lately because it sounds so great, this platform single sign-on thing. I log in with my identity provider credentials. Awesome. Except there's no identity provider that actually supports that part at all. Like even the preview stuff, you cannot sign in with your Mac with your identity provider credentials right now. So the first big difference is that Jamf Connect exists and platform single sign-on in Sonoma is a framework that could potentially be used by an identity provider in the future. One exists, one doesn't. Cool. Um, friend of the podcast, former Jamf employee, longtime identity provider, uh, thorn inside, Joel Rennick did a uh, great talk about what platform single sign-on could theoretically do, and he did that at the Mac sysadmins conference out in Sweden. In order to do his demonstration, he had to literally write an entire identity provider. he this is the type of wonderful nerd that Joel is, and I love him to pieces for all of this too. He literally wrote his own IDP, his own identity provider system, so that way he could actually try out all the pieces of platform single sign-on. That's the level of crazy it had to take in order to see how it worked. When that happened, when he went and did this research, and when he actually had to go write this, there's a whole bunch of different little things. So when you have platform single sign-on, it doesn't make user accounts. That's step number one. So like Jamf
Okay.
Connect, its first goal, right? It makes a user account on demand. Platform doesn't. You have to have a local user account on the Mac first. And then you go through this process of like linking it up with your identity provider. And it's a little weird. There's a lot of little notification center buttons that you got to look at. You got to pay attention to really make sure it's like, okay, I'm typing in which password now. It's strange. But so step one, you have to have a local user account, which means you got to go through Setup Assistant, which means also subsequently there is no zero touch deployment of this. Like someone has to actually physically touch a machine for this to work. Interesting. What it does after that point, the password sync in the background, it does different than Jamf Connect 2. It will check the password of the identity provider anytime or every 4 hours, which is way off from what Jamf Connect does. It'll do it anytime you wake from screensaver, a little strange, or wake from sleep. And it will theoretically do it anytime that you log into a service gated by your identity provider. Again, that like log into Salesforce, log into Workday, log into Jira, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't really tell you when it changes the password, just so you know, too. It's a little
Okay.
odd. Like it just does it.
Talk to us about that. I think that's important to kind of know if you have any details around that, what that might look like.
Yeah, like here's a perfect example. Let's say that you changed your cloud identity provider password. You change your Okta password on, I don't know, your BlackBerry, your Nintendo Switch, whatever the kids use these days. Now your Mac has been sleeping, and because you were on vacation, I don't know why you were logged into Okta while you were on vacation, but that's okay. You go and you turn on your Mac, and it has a password on it. So what password does it have, Kat?
My old password.
Well, the answer is maybe.
Okay.
Because
I'm going to assume my old one, but maybe not. Tell me why.
yeah. So here's the trick. Number one, it didn't do, if you have File Vault turned on, it's definitely your old password because your computer's fallen asleep so long that it's locked the drive. And platform single sign-on don't do nothing with the File Vault screen. File Vault screen is before the Mac OS even really fully starts. So okay, so now if you had File Vault turned on, it's definitely your old password. But let's say you didn't have File Vault turned on. Let's say you get to the real Mac OS login screen. Your organization doesn't care about security or encrypting its data at rest for some bizarre reason.
We're just going to
What's your
pretend that I don't work at Jamf because at Jamf they very much care about that. So just wanted to have that little disclosure. So we'll just say I work for, I don't know, Kat's bakery shop, and in the bakery shop we just don't care about security.
There
That's
you
what
go.
happened.
So Kat's just asking to be pwned, but that's fine. You're at the macOS login screen. You changed your password on your BlackBerry. What's your password on your Mac?
Would it be the new one?
The answer was trick question because either password would work.
Ooh, okay.
And there's no notification to you that either password did work. So you're at the login screen, you type in your username, you type in your old password, you type in your new password. They'll both work. Dot 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 question mark. But what does that mean from a security standpoint is that I could be rogue administrator of your Entra, change your password on Entra, and then walk over to your Mac and log in. And now I've got access to your keychain and all the stuff that's inside of it, your passwords to your home Wi-Fi, you know, tokens to access services, et cetera, et cetera. That's a little strange. I don't want to scream like the FUD of the world, you know, fear, uncertainty, doubt. Now, it's just how it works. It's a little different. You got to start now thinking about, okay, my computer, which used to be a device that I accessed stuff on, has now turned into a login factor. If I get that computer and I changed its password and I now am logged in to that computer, I now have access to literally everything else that that computer's got access to. So I could be rogue administrator and get into the secrets that you didn't want me to see as a user. But also the subsequent flip around to that is if I'm a bad actor and I find that computer and I find the post-it note with the password underneath it there, now that computer becomes a factor to access all the resources that are out there in the world that person could access, because you don't need to know the password anymore to anything like Salesforce or Jira or the secrets of your universe, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, and let's pretend there's no post-it note, right, with the password on it. Let's pretend I'm a little more savvy than that, and my password is Batman123, which is one of the most common passwords out there. Let's just say that's my password.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's perhaps the old password. I guess for me, was it designed to accept the old password in addition to the new password? Like, or is that just something that was uncovered in beta testing? I guess, like, because that to me, like from a security lens, it's like, whoa, why does the or old password or compromised password? What if we had to change it because my password was compromised and that old password still works? That's kind of where I'm going from a security lens. Again, at Kat's Bake Shop, we are not skilled in security, but at Jamf, I think we are. So I just want to kind of go through what that could look like then.
Yeah. And that's another big difference between Jamf Connect and the platform concept. That's actually a big difference between platform single sign-on and Jamf Connect is that one line right there about when does it check the password? Well, if you want to force a password change, or if you want force a user to actually log in online, or you want to enforce multi-factor authentication, platform does not have any support for that at all. The only time that it goes out and checks the password is if it thinks it needs it needs a password. It's like at the login screen, it could use either. It could use either the old password because it's a local login for a local Mac, still a local Unix user account from 1960. But if you happen to type in a password that was different, it'll go out and check it then and say, "Oh, that's the new identity provider password." And then when you log in, it'll actually give you some notification saying, "Okay, type in your old password, type in your new password," and but you're in the computer, so it's weird. It's really weird.
No, I would agree that it's not quite what I would have thought. So I guess what would you say, like, in a bullet or two, what are the benefits of it, or is that yet to be seen?
Well, the benefits of it is that it makes your local account password your cloud identity provider password, which is
Okay.
fine. And I talked to some of the guys at Apple and said that the ultimate goal is single sign-on is the single sign-on piece. Like I want to make it easier for you as an end user. You log in your Mac, you've subsequently logged into everything that you get access to. That if there's anybody out there that's ever seen like the Windows Hello experience where you log into a Windows machine, you've got your Entra credentials, now you're signed into everything automatically. That was like the way they have to go. But Windows machines are not Macs.
Right.
Macs are Unix. And so you've got all that underlying architecture in Unix. You've got user accounts, you've got file permissions, you've got secure tokens to decrypt drives, you've got software updates, you've got volume ownership, and it's just different. So it's an interesting thing that they've tried. Now, and this is important. Everything that I'm talking about, whether you log in with platform single sign on, everything about this password sync, again, does not exist. The framework's there, but there's no identity provider that's actually written this other than Joel Rennick playing in his own little sandbox there to see how it worked.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
So, is it just business as usual for now? Is it kind of wait and see? Like, what would you say to our wonderful 7 listeners if they're like, hey, should we test this? How can we get it to work with Jamf Connect? Are they independent of each other? That's another like burning question in the back of my head.
Yeah,
How do they play in the sandbox together? Can they?
that's a great question. It's like, what should I do right now? And I've been sitting here. I don't want to say that I've been bashing on this because it's not bashing on it. It's a nice idea. Um, I'm sure that when macOS El Segundo comes out, this will all be completely different, and there'll be a different way that it works. But let's talk about what does exist right now. Remember how I went through the history, and there's that single sign-on before it was platform single sign-on that came out of general preview and got into general release last year. It's pretty stable. It actually makes things like enrolling your computer into device compliance policies for Microsoft Entra way easier. It makes logging into applications with Okta absolutely sweet. We actually use it internally at Jamf. We actually use single sign on. Um, it's fantastic because I log in my Okta portal. I'm logged into everything. And more importantly, especially with Okta, Mitch has got it set up with a special authentication policy that you can say, okay, besides you're in the machine and you knew the password to your file vault, he also has it set up so you have to turn on biometrics. So you have to do a touch ID to get into some things that are like super secret. That's something that's really good. And you can do that with single sign on. You can do that today with single sign on. Jamf Connect kind of works in parallel with that. So Jamf Connect is just doing the log you into your computer, set up for the first time, notify mechanism there to show you what's happening to your computer when it's getting set up, keeps your password in sync. Also does all the other neat toys like, get Kerberos tickets and things like that. That works in right alongside of single sign-on. So my password to get into my Mac is my password to get into all my Okta stuff. But then I also need my fingerprint to make sure I get into the super secret stuff, which to me seems way more secure.
Does platform single sign-on also help with password sync as Jamf Connect does, or is that something Jamf Connect still kind of holds key to?
Yeah, Jamf Connect's going to do that part. The password sync of your local Mac, that's still going to be Jamf Connect. The old school single sign on doesn't do that at all.
Right. Okay.
So think of it as like two roller skates. You're both going in the same direction forward, but one roller skate's taking care of one foot, one's taking care of the other foot.
Is this something that will just become available in the OS, or where it's like going to be mandatory to leverage one way, shape, or form, or is this going to be optional, or do we not know yet?
That's a great question. It's definitely optional, and it's so optional that you can't actually just install the config profiles for it locally. You got to run it through an MDM. It's got to come down from on high. So that step is it's definitely going to be something that your organization could deploy as long as your identity provider supports it. So all 7 of you that are on Ping Federate, sorry, you're not going to have it there. More importantly, though, um, anybody who's in education, chances are you're using Google. Google has no support for single sign-on, and they have no plans on platform that they've announced at all. And the people that I've talked to over there in their identity teams are just looking at it going, it would involve rewriting our everything.
Okay. I mean, that's good insight, right? Because we want to we want to talk about what's happening out there, keep things current, and do our best with what knowledge we have available to us in this very moment to inform. And as you alluded earlier, things could change, as things kind of unfold between now and autumn. But I think it's important to just kind of understand where we're going with this. Before I kind of talk a little bit more about some Jamf Connect updates and kind of go on that route, anything here that maybe I forgot to ask or didn't consider asking you that you want all 7 listeners to know about platform single sign on?
Well, the most important piece is remember that your authentication policy is important here. Um, don't think of your computer as being a replacement for passwords. Just like passkeys are not a replacement for password. Passkeys are not multi-factor authentication. Single sign-on is not multi-factor authentication. It's a factor, right? And it's either something I know, something I have, or something I am. Those are the 3 different types of factors out there. Your computer becomes something that you have. And if you're just logging into something that you have, that's still 1 factor. And, you might have needed to know your password in order to get into it there. So you could theoretically call that 2 factors. But make sure you're being logical. Talk to your identity teams, because chances are the folks that are managing Macs out there aren't just the identity people. Talk to your network teams too, because there's stuff that you can do with your identity provider, with Jamf and your network teams to make sure that your logins are more secure. That not only do you know not only do you know the person, you trust the machine, and then you can trust the network. So that's this whole trusted access we keep talking about all the time. It's not just identity. So
I think that's great advice. And for those, again, listening, if you have any questions, you can email us at info@jamf.com and someone will answer those questions. You can always do attention to the podcast. But Sean, I appreciate you walking us through some of these current updates that are out there. As I kind of, I don't want to say change gears, but put more of a spotlight on Jamf Connect for a little bit more of this conversation. So for those listening, Jamf Connect is our solution that helps, as Sean mentioned earlier, if I just kind of sum it up really quick, it helps with identity, authentication, and security. It helps with multi-factor. It helps with the password sync. It helps create that initial account. It can verify who you are at startup. When the passwords change, it syncs it, makes sure that you don't get locked out of your machine. It can grab Kerberos tickets. Sean, am I missing anything else key that Jamf Connect does?
well, I was going to say I'm going to call it my tech tip of the day too at the same
Okay,
time. It's
let's
the
do it.
most underused feature of Jamf Connect, and that is offline multi-factor authentication. Everyone hates this idea. I'm just going to say it right off the bat. Okay. Um, why do we have this in this product? There's this nightmare in the world called cyber security insurance. If you are going to get a policy for X number $1 million there to say you're not going to get hacked, guess what? Your insurance company gets to decide things about you. They get to say, these are the type of locks you must put on your doors. These are the alarm systems that you must put in place. And this is what we're going to restrict on your computers. There are several organizations that I've talked to recently, including several insurance companies, all of which you've seen during a major recent football game as a commercial. And they are putting in a policy saying that you must do multi-factor authentication to log into any of your organization computers. They're writing it into the contracts. They're looking at it like, oh, Windows Hello is an answer for Windows side. On Mac, literally the only answer is Jamf Connect, because we have the ability to not only force you to log in online, but let's say you're on an airplane, you could actually say, okay, I have a code generator on my phone. Now I'm forced to type in the code generation, the one-time password code from my other device in order to get in locally on my Mac. It's literally the most underused feature of Jamf Connect, and we introduced it a couple of months ago. It works with any code generator. So if you Let's say you're Okta shop. Sweet, you got Okta Verify on your phone? Awesome. Scan the barcode. Boom. And if you need to log out of your computer, now you fulfilled the requirements of your insurance company, which is awesome.
I love that tech tip, and I like that you added that into, hey, this is what Jamf Connect does. I wasn't even certain on that feature, so I'm glad you mentioned it. And if you're listening, we hope you try it. And if you get stuck, call Sean. I wanted to ask some, because you've been in the identity space at Jamf for quite a few years. You are our identity subject matter expert, or one of them. Why would someone use Jamf Connect over other solutions in the marketplace? Because we used to be kind of the only one. I
Mm.
mean, technically it was Orchard and Grove, and then we bought our friends. So it still kind of became us, and sure, there's still, Nomad that's open source for free out there, of course. But
Pour one out though for poor Nomad. Yes,
okay.
it has been officially retired. Nomad
Oh,
is, yeah. You can still download the source code though. So
right.
anybody who wants to work that and sign it yourself and make changes and updates to it, more than welcome.
There you go. But I mean, I guess to put out there, or to rephrase it, there are other identity solutions out there that someone could use instead of Jamf Connect.
Yes.
So that's, I guess, the heart of my question. Why would someone use Jamf Connect for their Apple tech over whatever else might be out there currently?
So here's my elevator pitch for Jamf Connect. Jamf Connect creates user accounts just in time. It helps with the setup of your computer, and it manages the account permissions of that user from the cloud. So what does heck does that mean? I can drop ship a computer sealed up, fresh, brand new, straight from the factory. Apple's automated device enrollment program says, go talk to this Jamf Pro server when it turns on. Sweet. Jamf Pro slaps Jamf Connect onto that machine. Awesome. User logs in with their identity provider credentials. Maybe even with multi-factor authentication. Maybe you need to set up multi-factor authentication for the very first time because they're a brand new employee. Jamf Connect can help out with all of that stuff. Then Jamf Connect can hold that user in the setup assistant until you get the essentials on that computer. You get your endpoint protection software, you get Jamf Protect on there. You wait it and hold on to it till Jamf self-service is on the machine. That way the user knows what's going on their computer. So if they have a terrible network connection, never happened to me before, but if
Never.
they have a terrible network connection, the user knows what's happening to their computer. And last, that user's password is just going to stay in sync with the identity provider from that point forward. Cool. So they just have the one identity provider password that they use for everything at your organization. Very awesome. Beyond that, enforcing multi-factor authentication at the login screen, making it so people have to log in online when they get to their computer for high security requirements. You can actually see who's logging in where and when right inside your identity provider. You can look in the cloud logs there. You can drop that event into a SIM or SIEM of your choice there. So when something happens to that computer, you know who was on it. All that stuff is Jamf Connect.
I think one of the other things I've read, I've been like kind of scrolling through some of the forums. There's also concerns that competing solutions out there, or alternative options, we'll say, um, are open source, or perhaps don't have the backend security that Jamf Connect offers. Would you say that that is overall factual, or is that just a concern? I guess, what are your thoughts on some of those forum comments?
There is an open source identity provider based login window thing called Xcreds out there, which is actually a nifty application. Um, if there was Kerberos single sign on and there was Nomad, there's Jamf Connect, and there's Xcreds. Uh, nice software. It's open source, so if you did want to actually get in there and change things around, you can. Um, I don't really know too many people that have submitted code to Nomad, so I don't know how many people are actually going to be getting in and do that. The real trick is that we've had about it's been what 3 years, 4 years, and We're up at 2.33 is what is the release for Jamf Connect right now as of this recording. And we've been doing this for a while, and there's an awful lot of modifications for all these different set identity providers, and we got a lot of expertise on that one. More importantly, if something goes weird, you can call up Jamf support, and we're here to help out with that piece. Uh, with open source tools, your support is you, and that's okay if you're dedicated to doing it full time, kind of like I do. Fantastic. There are some other tools that are provided by some other companies. I'm not going to name the names because I do need to shame some shame. One offers the ability to change the user account password at the login screen. And the way it does that is it blasts away the user's password, like it literally overwrites it. And so when other organizations have said that they evaluated it, had one IT department that with 50 people that were testing it out that almost had a riot because all of their keychains have been destroyed. That's not a good sign. There's another org that does the same thing, but unfortunately it stores your user password in the system keychain, which the system keychain is available to everybody. So anybody on that computer can read from the system keychain, which means that anybody can see your password on that computer. That's not secure. So
It's not okay.
yeah, it's not secure. Just don't write your password on a post-it note, Kat, and put it underneath your computer. Just a tip from a friend.
I'll do my best.
Yeah.
I feel like this next question is a little bit the next two. They kind of go hand in hand, but I feel like this is kind of a nice little nightcap to the segment for today. But they're story time with Sean. Um, and what is the greatest pain point you've seen Jamf Connect solve for any of our customers that you've worked with during your time here?
It's that zero touch setup, which I think has been the most popular thing that people use Jamf Connect for. Just that ability to know, okay, this user is going to have their identity provider username and their identity provider password on their Mac. Um, you could probably ask Dr. K about the number of wackily named computers in our Jamf Pro server because people just go and change the name of it and it reports in the inventory. The number of wackily named usernames that people come up with sometimes when they're doing that makes it a little bit more difficult to figure out whose computer's whose. But if you know that the username is Sean.Rabbit, then chances are pretty good that's Sean Rabbit's computer. And who knows if who owns this one that's got a username of Fluffy Bunny. Uh, I've noticed a lot of organizations that do a lot of onboarding or customizations or wiping out computers on a regular basis, like, say, schools or people with labs or shared desk environments. They just love it because you just press the button, win a cookie, and you know you can see what's happening to the computer when it's set up. You're guaranteed that username is going to be consistent. So for your scripting or your reporting, you don't have to worry about it. And it's just nice being able to drop ship a computer and not have to touch it. I don't know about you, Kat, but as a system administrator, I'm lazy. I don't want to do any more work than necessary. If I could just drop ship it and set it up once, oh, it's
Yeah, and
lovely.
I think for those listening, like if you maybe it's not you, maybe you have a friend, and you know they're manually setting things up and then shipping it out. There is a better way. I know it sounds like a fairy tale. I know it sounds like legend has it you can actually drop ship and have a computer get set up over the air without having to be there. But that I would agree is huge from not only a time saving standpoint. Our Hobson uh, study basically said we're saving organizations 90% in that initial setup from the combination of Apple Business Manager, features in Jamf Pro, and the identity setup of Jamf Connect. Just make it all work. Um, so I think that's really really key, and I'm glad you're sharing that because it's something. It's not personally the first thing I would have thought of, like zero touch, kind of being the greatest pain point that you've seen Jamf Connect solve. But that means I take it for granted because I'm spoiled, and anytime I have any sort of technology from Jamf sent to my home, whether it's a Mac refresh, I spilled coffee on my Mac and get a new Mac, or an iPad, right? Like I just kind of go through the setup steps that Jamf wants me to go through. And I verify that, yes, I am who I am a couple times, about twice, before I'm even allowed to start touching things. And we're even getting to that, or we've gotten, I shouldn't say we're getting, we've already gotten to that point where before I'm allowed to drive my brand new Mac, um, just in case I click on something bad within the first 10 seconds of me verifying who I am, our security is already installed and in place. So if the first thing I do is accidentally attempt to install malware, Jamf Protect is stopping me as well. So I think I take that zero touch piece for granted, but I'm glad you shared that. Um, I guess my final question for you, and this is kind of I didn't think Jamf Connect would solve this, but it did. Like, what is the most interesting use case, perhaps, you've seen Jamf Connect be used, or perhaps just one of those, well, Jamf Connect solved this and wasn't the maybe initial intent, but it did, or I don't know. I'm just kind of looking like what comes to mind in your experience here.
Oh, I'm the owner of the wacky different uses out there for Jamf Connect. A major organization had a restriction that their contractors could not be shipped a computer. They had to actually use a bunch of Mac Minis that were located in a data center, and they would remote VNC into the Mac Mini so that way it stayed in the possession of the major organization. And they used Jamf Connect on these Mac Minis so the contractors could log in, get a user account, do their work, and then after their contract was up, they just simply hit the button to erase that user account off the machine, and it was already set up for the next contractor to do their development work. I thought that one was really cool. Um, the other weird one lately, major financial organization with like Fort Knox level of security for their network. They actually had a situation where their computers inside their network absolutely outright could not even get out to the network at all until it got a Kerberos ticket, which was impossible except for if you had Jamf Connect installed. So that way we would get the on-prem curb ticket, which would then go out and check the password and let the user actually do their job. Extremely cool little bit of tech there with the menu bar agent. So nifty little weird one-offs that Jamf Connect has managed to solve out there in the world.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing. And I guess any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
I do want to actually just bring one last point, and I've been talking about Jamf Connect from the identity standpoint here, but there's also Jamf Connect from the networking standpoint. So that's an entirely different podcast that we'd have to do at some point. But don't forget that Jamf Connect also has the ZTNA portion of Jamf Connect allows you to actually securely tunnel your data for different applications in a split tunnel type of system. So that way you could say when you're going to Salesforce, your data is encrypted and sent along a secure channel on demand with a stupid simple setup. It's like you just press the button and it works and it's great. And that part also works on iOS devices. And oh no, I might actually swear in this podcast, Android and Windows devices too, Kat. It's not just on Mac OS. So that's a topic for another day, though.
We'll save it for another one. Well, thank you so much, Sean, for walking us through this. Matt, we hope you and the wife and the little potato are doing well. Thank you so much to our listeners today. We hope you learned something new. And with that, I would say we are completed for the day. And thank you so much for listening.
So I'll take my guest hat off, and I get to put my professional podcaster hat back on.
Let's do it.
All righty. Jamf After Dark is a podcast from Jamf and is copyright 2024, all rights reserved. Technical details and product offerings may change at any time, so always check jamf.com for the latest information on our products and services.
You can reach out to us if you have questions, comments, or suggested show topics or fan mail. You can simply send an email to info@jamf.com with the subject line attention to the podcast. We are also a sponsor of the Mac Admins Foundation, and several Jamfs are available on the Mac Admins Slack channel. And of course, if you need support, do not hesitate to reach out to support@jamf.com to get your immediate technical needs answered.
And special thanks to our guest this week, me.
Yes.
More importantly, though, special thanks to our audio engineer, Justin Silvas, who always makes us sound great. And until next time, for Kat Garbus, I'm Sean Rabbit.
And for Sean Rabbit, I'm Kat Garbus, and we will catch you after dark again. Good night.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.